Hello everyone, this is John from Swift Sensors with a brief introduction to the Swift Sensors console. Before we get to the demo, I'd like to cover a few high-level concepts that we'll be showing you. First, you can organize your system into accounts or sub-accounts. For example, if you own multiple quick service restaurants or you're monitoring multiple buildings in a large facility, it may be more helpful to break each of those locations into a sub-account to make it easier to navigate through your sensors and your data. Next, we'll be viewing the actual sensors and measurements through the list view. And you'll see we have two different options for viewing. You can just look at your measurements or you can look at the hardware. One thing to keep in mind is the hardware view has a hierarchy of gateways which are connected to sensors which are taking measurements. And in some cases, a sensor may actually be taking multiple measurements. So keep that in mind as you're navigating through the system. When you highlight some of your hardware, you can view the status information on the right. For example, you can see what the battery capacity is or the strength of the network connection. And if you need to change any settings, you use the gear icon in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. For your hardware or your sensors, you can give it custom names and descriptions, which may make it easier to understand what that particular sensor is measuring if you have hundreds of them in your system. And the inspection rate, which determines how often the sensor is taking a measurement and sending it to the gateway. For measurements that may change very slowly, like temperature, you can expand the inspection rate to save on battery life. And finally, we'll show you how you can view the data from your sensors in real time and scroll through the historical data, all using the tools in the console. Now you'll notice that we'll be using the Swift Sensors demo system today. This is an account that you can log into yourself and explore the system in more depth on your own. The demo system is divided into 4 different sub-accounts representing 4 common customer scenarios. A facilities monitoring example showing a school district, food services monitoring a restaurant, manufacturing looking at some production line data, and then a pharmaceutical example looking at vaccine monitoring. You can use the login credentials here to access the demo system and explore more on your own. Now let's take a look at the demo. So I've logged into the demo system and you can see the 4 sub-accounts listed on the left in the list view. On the right, I have a high-level summary of each of these sub-accounts. The pie charts represent the status of all of the measurements within that account. So you can see green represents a measurement that's within normal operating levels, whereas yellow and red represents measurements that are at a warning or critical state. You can also see the status of the hardware in terms of battery life and connectivity to the network. For this example, we'll drill into the facilities monitoring case first to take a look at our measurements. You'll notice on the left side, just looking at measurement data, and I've organized these into logical groupings so I can see all of my coolers, all of my freezers separated, and then the server rooms also put into their own categories or subgroups. If I click on the hardware view, now I can see each measurement as it's connected to a gateway and the actual sensor. You'll notice in the server rooms we're using ambient temperature and humidity sensors that actually return 3 different measurements: temperature, humidity, and dew point. Let's drill into one of these sensors at the top. If I look at the elementary school freezer, you can see this is the type of sensor we're using. It's a 105, and you can see it has a strong battery life of 100% with a strong connection to the network. If I wanted to change any of the settings on this particular sensor, I simply select the gear icon, and here's where I can give it a custom name and description, as well as change the inspection rate. Depending on what I'm measuring, I can spread this between 1 and 30 minutes for each measurement. If I click on the actual measurement in the list view, now you can see that I'm looking at the live data. It's currently 2.4 degrees in the freezer, and you can see as I scroll back in time, it looks like there's been an event where the temperature has gone above the warning and even the critical levels. So I can zoom in to get a closer look at that event, or I can scroll through the data using this scroll bar in the bottom and try to understand, well, what exactly happened when. You can see that we breached the temperature warning level, which is represented by this yellow line, and the red line is the critical level, which are thresholds. In the next video, we'll go through how to configure these thresholds and notifications to notify someone when there's one of these conditions occurs. Now, to take a look at some other types of data, let's jump out of the school district example and look at our manufacturing case. Again, we see that we're monitoring a couple of different production lines, and we're looking at a vibration sensor, which is checking for the health of the machine. So in this case, we're monitoring the vibration, and when vibration goes over a certain level, we can generate an alarm. So this gives you a brief introduction to how to navigate through the console, view your hardware and your sensor data, and change some settings.